Arthur's family truth. My son had just survived emergency surgery. That should have been the good news. It wasn't. The surgeon pulled me aside before I could even see him. Didn't explain. Didn't slow down, just Mr. Greer. Now, we walked into a consultation room. He shut the door, locked it, then looked straight at me and said, "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room." He took out a thick envelope. "You need to understand what's really happening to your son." The phone rang at 2:15 in the morning. My sister Carolyn was asleep in the guest room. She'd driven up from Albuquerque for the weekend, visiting like she does a few times a year. I grabbed the phone before it could ring again. "Mr. Greer, this is Banner Desert Medical Center in Phoenix. We're calling about your son, Patrick." I was already out of bed. "He was brought in by ambulance about 45 minutes ago. Cardiac arrest at home. He's in surgery now. His wife is here with us. Patrick Greer is 36 years old. He runs 5 Kellis on weekends. His last physical was 8 weeks before that call. His doctor made a joke about his resting heart rate, said he had the cardiovascular system of a 22-year-old. Healthy 36-year-old men do not go into cardiac arrest in their own bedroom." I wrote that down in my head the same way I used to write anomalies in a case file. Then I got dressed and told Carolyn we were leaving. Flagstaff to Phoenix is about 150 miles. We made it in just under 2 hours. I pushed it. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not sorry either. Around 4:40 a.m., my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Text from Sandra, Patrick's wife. "Patrick awake. Surgery went well. Doctors say he's stable. No need to rush, he's resting." I handed the phone to Carolyn. She read it and didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "No need to rush. That's exactly right. His heart stopped. He was in emergency surgery before midnight. And his wife is texting his father, who is already doing 90 through the dark, to say there is no need to rush." I pressed harder on the gas. Sandra Greer was in the waiting room when we arrived just before 5 a.m. Hair done, mascara intact. Sitting straight with her hands folded like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. She stood when she saw me and her face did the thing faces do. Crumpled, tearful, relieved. She wrapped her arms around me and said it had been the most terrifying night of her life. I patted her back and said the things you say. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was even. The tears in her eyes hadn't touched her makeup. I've sat across from a lot of people who were performing. Sandra was good. If I hadn't spent 3 decades watching people lie under pressure, I might have believed her. She had her story ready. Patrick had been overworked. So much stress lately. She'd been worried about him for months. She said it all in the right order with the right pauses. She was very, very good. I nodded. I asked the right questions. I let her talk. 20 minutes later, a man in surgical scrubs came through the waiting room doors. Silver hair, early 60s, the specific kind of tired that comes from a long night in an operating room. He looked at Sandra, then at me. "Mr. Greer, I'm Dr. Howard Marsh. I performed your son's surgery." I stood and shook his hand. He made it through. "I'd like to speak with you privately for a few minutes." Sandra was on her feet before he finished the sentence. "I'm his wife. You can say whatever you need to say in front of both of us." Dr. Marsh's expression didn't shift. "Standard protocol, Mrs. Greer. Medical privacy." "It won't take long." I looked at Sandra. Just for a second, something moved across her face. Not worry, not relief. Something cooler than that. Calculating. Then it was gone, and the concerned wife was back. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I'll be right here, Dr. Marsh walked me down a hallway, past the nurse's station, past a supply room, into a small consultation room with a table and 2 chairs. He closed the door. Then he pulled a thick manila envelope from inside his coat and placed it on the table between us like he was presenting evidence, because he was. He sat down, looked at me directly. "Mr. Greer, your son's toxicology screen came back with digoxin at 3.1 nanograms per milliliter. Patrick has never been prescribed this medication. That level does not happen by accident. Based on the accumulation pattern, someone has been giving it to him regularly. My estimate is 10 to 12 weeks. I didn't say anything. Digoxin regulates cardiac rhythm in controlled doses. At 3.1 in an otherwise healthy man his age, it causes cardiac arrest. It mimics natural heart failure almost perfectly. Most hospitals don't screen for it without a specific reason." He slid the lab report across the table. One line, highlighted in yellow, I stared at it. 30 years of insurance work, hundreds of case files. And I had never once thought I would be sitting in a hospital at 5 a.m. looking at a toxicology report with my son's name on it. Dr. Marsh opened the envelope and kept going. 2 life insurance policies, $225,000 each, filed 9 months apart, both listing Sandra Harmon Greer as the sole beneficiary, both bearing Patrick's signature. I've known Patrick's handwriting since he was 7 years old. I still have the birthday card he made me in 2nd grade. Crayon letters, crooked lines, his name spelled wrong. I know the way he writes his capital P. I know the slight right-hand pull on his lowercase letters. Those were not his signatures. Dr. Marsh laid out one more document. Pharmacy records. Prescriptions written under Patrick's name for a cardiac medication he had never been prescribed. The dispensing physician on both documents, Dr. Dwayne Sutton, private practice, Scottsdale, Arizona. Who is Dwayne Sutton? I asked. Dr. Marsh didn't answer that directly. I worked a case 4 years ago. A man 43 years old, healthy, no prior cardiac history. Same presentation as Patrick, ruled natural causes. His wife collected $380,000 in life insurance within 90 days. I filed a report. The investigation went nowhere. He paused. I've been watching for this pattern since. When I saw Patrick's toxicology this morning, I knew. He told me he would keep Patrick sedated under restricted ICU access. No visitors without his personal authorization. He could protect Patrick inside the hospital walls. But your grandchildren are in that house right now, Mr. Greer. And the woman who did this is sitting 50 feet away from us. He stood, handed me the full envelope, and left. I sat in that room alone for about 2 minutes. Thought about Patrick at 7 years old learning to ride his bike in the driveway. Thought about the Christmas 3 years ago when he brought Sandra to Flagstaff for the first time and she sat at my table and smiled at everything I said. Thought about every Sunday phone call for the past year where Patrick sounded tired and said Sandra was taking good care of him. Then I put the envelope inside my jacket and walked back out to the waiting room. Sandra was exactly where I'd left her. She looked up with the right amount of concern. Everything okay. He's resting well. They just wanted to go over the surgical notes with me. I sat down next to her and let her talk for another 20 minutes. She told me Patrick had been under enormous stress at work, that she'd been pushing him to slow down for months, that she'd known something was wrong and blamed herself for not doing more. Every word was in the right place. She was a careful, careful woman. At one point, she mentioned she always made Patrick's coffee in the morning. Said it was her way of taking care of him. Said he never had to think about it. She handled it every day. I filed that away. I excused myself around 6:30 a.m., told her I was going to move the truck and check on Tanya and Owen. She called me Dad, first time in 5 years of marriage to my son, and pressed the house key into my hand. Tell them Daddy is going to be fine, she said. Warm smile. Steady hands, I went to the parking lot and knocked on Carolyn's window. She'd been waiting in the car. I handed her the envelope without a word and watched her read. She got through the first page without reacting. The second page, the insurance policies, she shook her head slowly. By the time she reached the forged signatures, she'd stopped making any sound at all. The kids are home alone, I said. We need to go now. We got to the house in Scottsdale 35 minutes later. It was a nice street, Spanish tile roofs, flowering plants in every yard, bikes on the porch. Looked like every Christmas card photo Patrick had ever sent me. I knew what happened behind those doors. Tanya and Owen were in the living room when we walked in. Owen is 8. He launched off the couch and into my arms before I got 2 steps inside. Tanya is 11. She stood back and watched me the way she always does, reading something in my face that I didn't know was showing. I told them their dad had gotten sick, but the doctors helped him and we were all going to go see him. Owen ran upstairs to grab his backpack and his tablet. Tanya didn't move. Grandpa, she said quietly, can I show you something first? She led me to her room, pulled her tablet off her desk and sat on the edge of her bed. Her hands weren't shaking. She was calm in a way that worried me a little. 3 weeks earlier, she told me she'd been watching a show in the living room and left the tablet recording on the kitchen counter when she went to bed. She found the audio file 2 days later while looking for something else. She'd listened to it twice and hadn't known what to do with it. She pressed play. 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Sandra's voice, clear and unhurried, on the phone in the kitchen while the kids were supposed to be asleep. He's getting weaker, Dwayne. It's almost time. The policies are already in place. Once it's done, you and I don't have to keep waiting. Just stay on the schedule and don't change anything now. A man's voice, lower, harder to make out. How much longer? Sandra, 2 weeks, maybe 3. Don't call me on this number again until it's done. Silence. Then the sound of Sandra opening a cabinet. The tap running. Ordinary kitchen sounds. Tanya stopped the recording and looked at me. Who's Dwayne, Grandpa? Why does Mom sound like that? I told her she did exactly the right thing saving that file. I told her it was very important and I needed to keep it safe. I held out my hand. She placed the tablet in it without hesitating. That kid. I'll never forget that moment, as long as I live. I was putting the tablet in my jacket pocket when we heard the garage door open. Sandra was home 40 minutes early. I heard her heels on the garage floor. The door into the kitchen opened. Normal sounds, keys on the counter, purse set down. The sounds of someone coming home from running errands. I told Tanya quietly to take Owen outside and wait by Carolyn's car. She took her brother's hand and walked out the front door like it was the most natural thing in the world. No questions, no hesitation, just went. Sandra came through the kitchen and stopped when she saw me standing in the hallway. You're still here. Flat. Not warm. Just getting the kids ready. We're heading to the hospital now. She looked at me, then at my jacket, then back at my face. Her eyes moved the way they do when someone is calculating, not thinking. Did you go upstairs? Just to get Owen's backpack. She held the look for one beat longer than felt comfortable. Then the smile came back. Of course. Drive safe. Cliff. I walked out. I told Carolyn to pull out before I had my door fully closed. She didn't ask why. We were 2 blocks away before either of us said anything. She knew, Carolyn said. She suspected. There's a difference. She couldn't say anything without admitting she had something to hide. We got Owen settled with snacks in the back seat. Tanya sat beside him and kept him talking about what he wanted to bring his dad. She was keeping him calm. At 11 years old, she was managing her little brother through a situation she only half understood, and she was doing it better than most adults would. I called Detective Nadine Voss from the highway. Phoenix PD homicide. I'd gotten her name from a contact I still had at the department, someone I'd worked with years ago on a fraud case that crossed into homicide territory. Voss had caught a suspicious death case in 2019. A man in his early 40s, sudden cardiac event, wife collected the insurance. She'd never been able to close it. When I told her I had a toxicology report showing digoxin poisoning, forged insurance policies, and a recorded conversation between the wife and her accomplice discussing a dosing schedule, Voss went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What's the accomplice's name?" Dr. Dwayne Sutton, private practice in Scottsdale. Another pause, longer this time. That name is in my 2019 file, Mr. Greer. She told me to stay exactly where I was and not to go back to the hospital. She said she'd have officers at Sandra's house within the hour and a unit posted outside Patrick's ICU room before noon. By the time Voss had officers at the Scottsdale house, Sandra was gone. She'd gone back in after we left, moved fast, and cleared out in under 20 minutes. Go bag, backup phone, her car. She'd been ready for this possibility. That told me she'd thought about getting caught. She just hadn't thought it would happen this soon. Sutton's clinic in Scottsdale went under surveillance that same morning. I found a motel off the I-17, paid cash for 2 adjoining rooms. Tanya and Owen took one with Carolyn. I sat on the edge of the bed in the other one with the envelope on the table in front of me and didn't sleep. Voss called me every few hours. Sandra's phone was off. Sutton had gone into his clinic that morning like nothing was wrong. That told us he didn't know yet. Voss had a team watching him and a warrant in process for his prescription records. On the morning of day 2, Sutton was picked up at his office while seeing patients. They found a second phone in his desk drawer with messages going back 14 months. Sandra was found that same evening at a motel in Tucson, 115 miles south of Phoenix. She'd used a credit card once gas station outside of Marana, and that was enough. When Voss called to tell me they had her, I was sitting outside the motel room watching Owen kick a soda can around the parking lot in the dark. I said thank you and hung up and just sat there for a while. Patrick woke up fully on day 6. The nurse called me that morning, said he was breathing on his own and asking for his kids. I told her we'd be there within the hour. The drive to the hospital was quiet. Owen fell asleep against the window. Tanya stared at the road ahead of them. I kept my eyes forward and thought about what I was going to say to my son. I didn't need to say much. Patrick said it first. Why did you have Sandra arrested? His voice was hoarse from the breathing tube. He was pale and thin in a way that made him look younger than 36, but his eyes were clear and they were angry. I never liked her. I know that. But this is different, Dad. She's been here every day. She loves me. Patrick, don't. You've been looking for a reason since the day I introduced her to you. And now you've used the worst moment of my life to blow up my marriage. I didn't argue. I'd spent 30 years knowing that when someone has made up their mind to believe something, evidence rarely changes it in the first conversation. You have to let the information sit. I told him the evidence existed, and it was real, and that the arrests were legitimate. I told him his daughter had been the one who recorded the conversation that broke the case open, not me. Then I told him I loved him and I'd be outside when he was ready to talk. He didn't call me that night, or the next. On day 8, Tanya asked if she could use my phone to call her dad. She went into the bathroom and closed the door. I heard her voice through it, quiet at first, then steadier, then something that might have been crying from one or both of them. She was in there 31 minutes. When she came out, she handed me the phone and said, "He needs a few days," but he heard me. Patrick called me at 12:47 in the morning, 3 days later. I was awake. I picked up on the first ring. He didn't say hello, he just said, "Dad, I'm sorry." His voice was different from the last time we'd spoken. The anger was gone. What was left underneath it was something quieter and harder to listen to. She made my coffee every morning, every single morning for 2 years, kissed me goodbye, asked me how I was feeling. And the whole time he stopped. Started again. "I told you she was taking good care of me. I said that to you. I believed it. You had no reason not to. I called you a liar. You were in an ICU bed 3 days after your heart stopped. I don't hold that against you." We talked for almost an hour. He asked questions I'd been waiting to answer, about the toxicology, the forged signatures, the recording Tanya had made. When I told him about the insurance policies, he went silent for a long time. $450,000 filed before she'd even started dosing him. She had the exit planned before she'd fully committed to the entrance. At one point he said, "What kind of fool does that make me?" I told him the same thing I told every fraud victim I'd ever sat across from in 30 years. The kind who trusted someone they loved. That's not stupidity, that's just being human. She knew exactly what she was doing. "You didn't." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Can I see the kids tomorrow? I'll have them there by 9. The trial ran 11 days in October. Patrick testified on day 4. He walked into that courtroom looking like a man who had decided something, jaw set, shoulders straight, no hesitation in his step. He sat in that witness box and told the jury everything. The morning coffee routine, the vitamin Sandra insisted on, the 6 ER visits where he'd been sent home with instructions to rest and reduce his stress levels. Every time he'd felt too tired to finish a run and told himself he was just getting older. He looked at the jury and said, "I didn't know I was being poisoned because I didn't believe someone who said they loved me could do that." That belief almost killed me. 2 jurors wiped their eyes. The defense tried to shake him, suggested he'd been complicit in the insurance fraud, suggested his father had coached him. Patrick answered every question the same way, steady, factual, no emotion he hadn't earned. When the defense attorney finally sat down, Patrick stepped off the stand and walked past Sandra without looking at her once. Tanya testified on day 7. She walked to that witness stand in her school clothes, dark blue sweater, gray pants, and sat down like she'd done it before. She was 11 years old and she did not flinch. She explained how she'd found the recording. She played it for the jury through the courtroom speakers. Sandra's voice filled the room. "Once it's done, you and I don't have to keep waiting," and the room went completely still. The defense had no questions for her. None. When she came back and sat down next to me, I put my arm around her shoulders and felt her take one long, slow breath. That was the only moment she let herself feel it. Sandra Greer, 22 years, no parole, attempted murder, insurance fraud, child endangerment. Dwayne Sutton, 12 years. Criminal conspiracy, fraudulent prescriptions, accessory to attempted murder. When the judge read the verdicts, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the way you feel at the end of a very long drive, just glad to have arrived somewhere safe. Patrick and the kids moved to Flagstaff 5 months after sentencing. He bought a place 1.8 miles from my property, close enough to walk, if the weather's right, far enough that we both have our space. He took a remote consulting position with a firm out of Denver, works from his kitchen table most mornings. He still doesn't drink coffee, Switched to tea? Some things take longer than others, and that's fine. Owen joined Little League in the spring. I've been to every home game. He's not a natural, but he works hard, and he's starting to connect more than he misses, which is all you can ask at 8 years old. Tanya made the school debate team and won her first tournament in March. Her teacher called me afterward and said she had a gift for building an argument and staying calm under pressure. I told her I wasn't surprised. Last Thanksgiving, all of us were at my table. Carolyn drove up from Albuquerque. I made the turkey, same recipe I've used since Patrick was small. We ate too much, watched football, stayed up talking until nearly midnight. Before bed, Tanya hugged me at the door and said, "You believed me when nobody else did, Grandpa." I told her she had it backwards. She was the one who trusted her own instincts when everyone around her was explaining things away. She was the one who saved the file and waited for the right moment. I just showed up. She shook her head like I was missing the point. Maybe she was right. I think about Dr. Marsh's 2019 case sometimes. That family who lost someone because the pattern was there and nobody caught it in time. I think about the file Nadine Voss had been carrying for 4 years with Dwayne Sutton's name in it and no way to close it. I was paying attention, that's all. 30 years of watching how people lie trained me for one specific moment I never wanted to need. If something doesn't add up, a text that should bring relief but doesn't, a face that performs the right emotion at the wrong time. A story that sounds practiced, don't talk yourself out of what you're seeing. That instinct cost me nothing. Ignoring it would have cost me everything. The people who want to hurt you are counting on you to be polite. They survive because good people talk themselves out of what they already know. 30 years of fraud work taught me one thing that no classroom ever could. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in the right amount of love. This is a fictional story with dramatized elements created to deliver a message about trusting your instincts and protecting the people you love.